And we're live. This is Inside Indiana Overtime. Is this ScoopTalk? I don't know.
It's probably ScoopTalk. Yeah, I'm
probably ScoopTalk.
Yeah, it's
Inside Indiana
Overtime.
I'll take it. It's ScoopTalk. It's whatever you want it to be.
It's all the above.
It's a trip to the park if you want it to be that. I mean, you can take it anywhere. We're mobile.
We are.
You know,
most you got a laptop
days, but whatever. We're at the United Center. This is Dustin Dopirak from Bloomington Herald-Times. I'm Zach Osterman.
That's Zach
Alex
Osterman.
is
Yeah.
being lazy. I don't know. Doing something.
Jeremy's not here yet.
He's networking. He's doing some student thing. Thinking about his future. What's up with that? Anyway, we have been at the United Center for like 10 hours now.
Something like that.
I think something right. We've seen 2.5 basketball games, give or take. We're actually in the press conference area right now, which they will not be using hopefully for a while, unless something very drastic happens with this Purdue-Nebraska game, which is on the TV in front of us. So if you hear
like if an airplane crashes on it or something, I think that's the only thing that would stop this game. It's like the first quarter.
Got to block that glare. No.
Yeah.
But we're mostly talking about Indiana, Illinois, and I guess to start off with, Illinois 51, Minnesota 49.
Mm-hmm. And a pretty hideous game.
Yeah, and really,
except for a really exciting last 2
honestly, I did a radio spot between sessions because they split up the sessions. The first 2 games, the second 2, there's kind of like a 2-hour break where. Is fairly in it, pretty good defensively, all things considered. Helped by some Trevor Mbakwe foul trouble, but pretty good defensively, and heavily relying on Brandon Paul. It was
entirely relying on.
It was interesting that it was a game that played almost exactly to expectations
In some ways,
and then I didn't think it was going to be
this slow. I think it was going to be
but I mean, when I'm talking about statistics, I'm talking, and when I'm saying that, what I'm saying is statistically, the strengths of each team, the sort of the primary characteristics of each team were exactly what we saw.
Pretty much.
And yes, there was some disparate offense. The two teams combined to make 34 of 96 field goals. If you cut Brandon Paul's 10 of 16 and Austin Holland's 4 of 5 out of there, it's ugly. I don't know. It's something of 75. It's
Illinois was
20
8
of 75.
Illinois was 8 of 40 minus
20 of 75. So at about 30% is what it would be without Austin Hollands and Brandon Paul. Holland's shooting and Andre Holland's shooting to an extent brought Minnesota back into the game in the second half. Trevor Mbakwe went to the bench in foul trouble in the first half, and Minnesota looked like it had never played without Trevor Mbakwe in its life. Gophers only scored 16 points in the first half and shot 27.3% from the floor. But when they got Mbakwe back, they started putting it into Illinois a little bit more, and really I think we saw something that Indiana should be able to exploit, you would think, which is that Illinois didn't really have an answer once. I mean, Mbakwe wasn't great in this game. He only had 8 points and 7 rebounds. But Illinois struggled to deal with his presence, particularly when Minnesota went to zone, which is something Illinois struggled with all year. Indiana's, sometimes to the chagrin of its fans, played a fair amount of zone this year, and obviously has that pretty solid. I mean, I don't know if I'd say terrific inside presence, but Cody Zeller's actually been a pretty good big body defender this year. You'd think that's a way that Indiana can maybe negate, not so much Brandon Paul. He's kind of one of those players a little bit like Trey Burke, where he always seems to get his in some way. Right. Can you make him do it inefficiently, and then can you do what Minnesota did very well today, which is take away all the complementary pieces?
Yeah. No, I mean it helps when DJ Richardson's off. Basically, I mean, that's one thing that I wrote about a little bit in my preview today. I mean, Richardson does just keep shooting, and Richardson did eventually hit a huge monster 3 to tie this game, and that's just kind of what he did.
I think 4 offensive rebounds.
Yeah. And I think obviously Minnesota defended very well, but I mean, in a lot of ways, Illinois will do or not do. They sort of determine their own destiny. I mean, if Richardson's shooting well, it's tough to stop him. If Paul is making shots, it's tough to stop him. But in a lot of cases, they can be off. I mean, Richardson shoots like 33% from 3 because he's taken 230-something this year, like 280 more than Jordan Hulse has, or something like that. It's crazy. So I don't know if there's things that how much you can look at this game and say it's a model. Like if you could just do what they did, take away their complementary parts. Richardson had looks. I think. I mean,
he had some. I mean, he was what he was. I think he was.
I don't think anybody
12 from the floor, 2 of 8 from behind the arc. I mean, he had some open looks that he missed. He was also forcing others. I mean, there were times where they were shooting.
But that's DJ Richardson.
Well, that's fine. But I mean,
I mean,
not something Indiana can't do, I guess.
As per usual, I think it just starts, the whole Victor Oladipo, Brandon Paul matchup starts everything.
Yeah.
In this game. It was fun to watch last time.
Paul does a lot more. I mean, he handles the ball a lot. John Gross, I think, talked to you about how he thought what was just as crucial as Brandon Paul scoring. He played 36 minutes tonight.
2 assists and turnovers.
Yeah, and
he
just
typically has
more generally just kind of this
efficient.
He handles the ball a lot. Illinois looks to him for composure and poise. It looks to him, he kind of cues his team. He's a senior, he's a scorer, he's a third-team All-Big Ten player who has the capacity to play like a first-team All-Big Ten player like he did tonight. Yeah. And when he does that, it's almost like the reverse of what Indiana talked about, where they want the defense and the rebounding to lead to scoring. I think sometimes with Brandon Paul, the scoring leads to just sort of confidence and assuredness in other areas.
Right, for him and for everybody else. When Brandon Paul is scoring, that's the if Illinois has a rock. Illinois and Minnesota, I think, are the two most sort of schizophrenic up and down teams there are. But if Illinois has one thing it can rely on, that feels like it can rely on, it's Brandon Paul. And when Brandon Paul was scoring, then everything else, all else is well with the world, and they feel like they can at least go after somebody, and that's what they're going to be looking for. If Brandon Paul steps up and has a good game, that's going to add the confidence to everybody else. So Illinois already beat Indiana once, and that I think will make them feel like they can do it again. If he gets going and gets his points, that's going to be what Illinois is looking for.
Again, you do kind of have to come back to the rebounding. Illinois had 12 offensive rebounds. Again, 4 of those, though, came in one possession at the very end of the game. I'm not sure that's necessarily.
And they lost the overall rebounding battle by 12.
By 12. That's an area where if you can force them into misses, you should be able to get into them. And maybe that's one area where, just in terms of big man play, people were pretty disappointed with Indiana. For the way they closed out against Illinois on the road, because Nana Egwu fouled out with like 5.5 minutes remaining, and you felt like at that point, okay, here's where Indiana just becomes Cody Zeller's team. Kick him the ball, force whoever posts him up, whether it's Tyler Griffey or Sam McLaurin or someone to try and defend him. They probably can't. He'll either get fouled or he'll get an easy bucket, something like that, and that's how you close out the game. It does seem like, certainly, if you think about the Michigan game in particular, but I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen Indiana understand more and more the value of getting Zeller the ball.
Well, really, that game too.
Yeah,
and that following game after that.
Well, and
from the Illinois game, the Ohio State game, it seemed like they took that to heart a lot.
And I think that's one area where Indiana can really. Again, part of it probably depends a little bit on what you get from the officials, because Indiana, in those situations, wants to shoot a lot of free throws.
Right.
If it's a tightly called game, this one, it kind of was just 28 total fouls. So if it's a tightly called game, then Indiana can start, scoring free points at the line, can really slow the game down, maybe can get Illinois' bigs into foul trouble and start creating some mismatches.
Right.
But I think, particularly when you're dealing with a foreign shooting environment, a different background behind the rim, behind the goal. I think getting it inside, getting it as close to the rim as you can is paramount for Indiana. And they shouldn't have a better formula for what to do with it than they did on Sunday. 25 and 10 for Zeller, and basically he just took he took the game over at the end.
No, absolutely, and they've found a way to do that. It's really just about discipline and getting it in there. And I think that was sort of the biggest lesson they took from the first Illinois game, was that, they didn't make as much of a point as they needed to do to get it in there. Illinois was kind of moving him, displacing him a little bit, and Zeller wasn't getting the ball really low. There was probably one of the best cases of him not necessarily demanding the ball, not necessarily getting position, getting himself in a spot where if he got the ball, he could score out of it. And it seemed just like literally after that there was a major adjustment made from Illinois to Ohio State, and that was one of the biggest maturations I think they made in that game, was just saying, okay, we're going to get the ball inside, and here's how we're going to do it.
To Watford,
get
too.
the ball.
Christian
Watford obviously got the two, and even Vic in that game.
Yeah.
But that's clearly where Indiana has the advantage. Illinois, I think they've got a couple guys that can defend you down low. Griffey obviously can hit some pick and pop threes. They've got decent production out of their forwards, but they don't have anybody that can match Zeller sort of bucket for bucket. Egwu can get into him a little bit. Certainly, he's a physical guy. So is McLaurin, who was defending him as well. So they did a good job of keeping them from getting really low. But whatever you're getting out of the low block from Indiana is more than Illinois is probably going to get offensively, at least. They're very obviously offensively. They're almost entirely guard oriented.
Yeah, and the other obvious talking point is basically just I know it sounds kind of stupid, but focus. I mean, it felt very much like Indiana just totally lost focus in that Illinois game. I mean, when I talk to people about it now, I say I thought they played. If Indiana played that 5-minute stretch anywhere else in the game, they'd probably win it. They just picked the wrong time to just totally switch off. They stopped doing exactly what they said was so crucial to beating Illinois, which is closing out the corners, particularly against their shooters. DJ Richardson being the primary example. Right. He scored, I think, 8 points in the last 2 minutes, added a block and a steal for good measure. I mean, he basically won the game at the end. So, I don't know. People talk about a revenge game with Indiana in this, and certainly they do seem to play well, at least in the last couple of years when they are kind of coming back into that thinking, let's get back. I don't think they've lost to Illinois twice in 1 year since 2010. But what's bigger for Indiana is they do seem to kind of learn from their mistakes.
They do.
When they make some of those. I mean, they're not gonna lose Richmond tomorrow, and they might lose somebody else. They might give up on Tracy Abrams or Joe Bertrand or someone like that. But you just it learns from what it does wrong very well.
Right. And
you get the feeling. I mean, if Richardson scores, if he scores a lot tomorrow, he's probably gonna have to earn it.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I think. I actually, when they said when I watched the film of that game, I didn't think the leaving the corners thing was. I thought that was overplayed. There was at least one case where Yogi Ferrell got yelled at for leaving the corner because otherwise he was going to give up a wide open layup. There was nobody in front of the ball except for him because nobody switched off the pick and roll. But anyway, I mean, I think they're going to know you can't let Richardson get free. They're fully aware of that. That's probably scouting report number 2, other than just defend the heck out of Brandon Paul because he's going to hit shots. And I think they will realize they can go inside. They have to go inside. And I think it's just big for them to have a game in the first round of this Big Ten tournament against somebody, or in the quarterfinals of this Big Ten tournament against somebody that has beat them, I think, because this keeps them focused. Just on a general standpoint, they don't come in here and feel like they're getting a lowly 8 seed that's that's close to having its season end. Illinois is an NCAA tournament team, and they have beat them, and they know full well that if they have a bad game, they could be out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, and neither of us are bracketologists by any means, but
no.
You would think if the committee does kind of hold to its mantra of making sure it examines the whole body of work and not just getting caught up in late season runs and things like that, that if Indiana wins tomorrow, it probably locks up Indianapolis.
Probably.
Whatever. I mean, Louisville, it's possible if they win the Big East tournament. I think Indiana's resume would probably still look better overall.
Right. Louisville would have to win the Big East, and it would also have to get the right matchups. I mean, I think it's got to be Georgetown and Marquette.
Yeah, and I think
Marquette's got to get there.
That would be there.
And then you've got to discuss. Yeah, I mean that's the way the bracket would shake out, but it would have to go that way. Georgetown would have to actually get to the final.
But one way or the other, Indiana would go a long way toward locking up. A really long way. And we've said this a number of times, but the reality is, the closer you get, the bigger the steps are. This would be one really big one toward locking up not only Dayton, which is probably pretty much locked up at this point, but Indianapolis as well. Yeah. And I think that would mean a lot to this team if it did not have to leave. If they had confines for the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament until it potentially went to the Final Four.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what they need more than anything else. That opportunity is huge to be able to play that close to home. It doesn't get any more close to home in a Sweet 16, Elite 8 situation.
Unless it's 1981.
And you get to play in Bloomington.
In 1981, they played.
You don't get to do that anymore. That's not so much.
I can't imagine how that conversation went, but
yeah.
So one way or the other, we'll be here. It's 11 a.m. tip local. It's noon Eastern. Everybody, get sick tonight. Stay home from work. Work from home after lunch. I don't really care what you do. Just don't get fired. That's all I'm saying. But it should be a good one, and really, on paper anyway, you'd think Indiana probably ought to. Not really sure what's going on over there. I think they just turned on Die Hard 3.
I think that's definitely what that
is. Okay, we have to go. This is really loud. Thanks for Inside Indiana Overtime Scoop Talk. That's Dustin Dopirak. I'm Zach Osterman. You stay classy. Of course, the noise goes away just as soon as we stop. We'll see you tomorrow.